So let's look at some of what you guys just did, especially the positive and negative questions. Okay. Now, what do we call these positive and negative numbers we work with? We'll call them integers. So an integer is a number with no fraction or decimal parts. That's positive, negative, or zero. But positive, negative whole number. Doesn't have a decimal attached to it, doesn't have a fraction attached to it. Okay, so I mean, examples, you can think of any positive number, 7. Think of any number, whole number, and put a negative in front of it, negative 20. And don't forget, 0 is also 1. 0 is a special number because it's not positive or negative. It's nothing. Okay, how do we add and subtract these things? So these are some questions that you guys did on that previous. Hello. No. So what if we add 2 numbers or more than 2 numbers and they're all positive? Or what if we combine numbers by subtraction and everything's negative? Well, this is pretty straightforward. You guys have been doing this for a long time. Okay? If all the numbers are positive and you're asked to add them together, you just add them together and the answer is positive, right? So our answer here would be, anybody? 11. This one, well, you can kind of think of it like you've got a negative 5 and a negative 6. So if everything's negative, I mean, technically you're subtracting, but you think, okay, I've got a negative 5 and a negative 6. Together, the 5 and 6 make 11, and it has to be negative. So you can think of it that way. Negative 5 and negative 6 is negative 11. Or maybe you think of it like a thermometer. Okay, where temperature, you're at -5, so you're below 0, and you go down another 6. Okay, you don't go up. It's not +6, you go down. So you start at -5, and then you got to count 6 more down. And again, that gives you negative 11. So there's a couple ways you can think of it. What about if one of them's positive and one of them's negative? So we've got -4 plus 7. Anybody want to say how they would do it? Sarah?
I would use your thermostat.
Okay. Yeah, so you'd start at -4. If you go up 4, you're at 0, but we still got another 3 to go. So sure, that's one way you can look at it. You get +3. Another way you can look at it, some students may do, is if it's positive and negative, find the difference between the 2 numbers, and whatever number had the negative, bigger negative or positive at the beginning, that's what goes in front of your, that's the sign that goes in front of your answer. So you may think of it, well, the difference between 7 and 4 is 3, but there's more positives, right? So it'd be +3, but we don't have to write +3, we can just write 3. That's another way you can think about it. What would this one be? 3? -3. Difference between those two numbers is 3, but there's more negatives this time. Okay, 4, start at 5, go down 5 to 0, and I still got to go down another 3 to get to -3. What about if we have more than 2 numbers? Well, a couple ways you could look at this. You could just start from the left and go to the right. So if we start at -4, we go up 8 to get +4. Then we go up another 5. Start at 4, up another 5. Work with me. 9, thank you. But then we go down 3. And then we go down another 9. So we start +6, down 9. -3. So that's one way you can look at it. Another way you can look at it, put all the positives together, put all the negatives together, combine those. So I could look at this and say, okay, I've got 4, 3, 9 negatives, I've got 16 negatives. And I've got 13 positives. Put those together, you also get -3. Next one is a similar question, but we've got some bigger numbers. Mathematicians are lazy. They're looking for the easiest way to do things. Can you see something that would make life a lot easier for you in this question? Can I? Exactly. Right. That makes it a lot easier. One's positive, one's negative. They cancel each other out to nothing. So now we're just left with a simple 9 minus 5 and -3, which gives us 1. Okay. All right, what if we have double signs? So this kind of, there's certain rules that apply when we have double signs, and it's the same rules that when we multiply and divide positives and negatives, okay? Whenever you add a negative, that's the same as subtracting. If you think about it, you're adding a negative, so you're adding a bad thing, which means you're taking away. So this is the same as 6 minus 10. We've now turned it into a question like we've been doing since the beginning of this lesson. My answer would be 4 times 4, -4. Next one, if you subtract a positive, well, again, that's the same as subtracting. So that would give us 12 minus 5, which would give us 7. So we subtract a negative. Yeah, it becomes plus. So when you're think of it like you're taking away a bad thing. If you're taking away a bad thing, that's good. So 7 plus 8. And that gives us 50. Couple more here. Well, again, we've got 2 negatives, that becomes a plus. So that's really the same as -4. I don't need the parentheses. And these are called parentheses, by the way, not brackets. Brackets look like this. Just so you know. This will become -4 plus 2. Which would give us -2. Here, take any double signs and combine them into one. So I've got a -5, I don't need the parentheses. This is just a single sign, +6. This becomes +4, yes. And that becomes -7. So now it looks like a question that we did earlier on. Couple ways you could do it. Put all the negatives together, put all the positives together, and then combine those. Or just start from the left and work to the right. Anybody got an answer? -2 is correct. Good. And the two other main operations besides addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. And it's the same rules actually when we're combining two signs. So like if you multiply two positives, it's positive. If you multiply two negatives, it's positive. If you multiply a positive and a negative or negative positive, it's negative. So really all you have to do is multiply the numbers and just make sure you got the right sign. So for this first one, 7 times 3 is 21. Two negatives make a positive. What would the next one be? Emily? Yeah, -30. 6 times 5 is 30, but it's a negative and a positive, so it's negative. Remember that bar means division. We try and get away from this in high school math. We don't really use that very much for division. You'll see it sometimes. Why is it keep doing it? What would 25 divide -5 be? Nicole? -5. What's, I can't, all I hear is that. Okay. Positive. Thank you. You're going to yell at me. It's okay. My feelings won't get hurt. And if they do get hurt, I'll wait till the end of class. All the way to the first floor to commence washing, so I can go cry. Okay. All right. Cool. What about if we're multiplying a whole bunch of numbers? So again, you can do the left to right thing. So go -4 times +2, get that answer, times -1, get that answer, times -2, get that answer, times +2, get that answer, which is the final. That's one way to do it. Another way you could do it is, what do you think the sign of the final answer would be and why? Positive or negative? Why? Well, because there's more negatives than positive. So what if we had, like, if I put -7 after, times -7, would it be negative or positive? Listen.
It would be negative. It would only be positive if all the signs were negative.
Or if the negative, there were an even number of negatives, right? Yeah, so like, these would make a positive. This is positive, but because that's negative, the answer is going to be negative. So if it's an odd number of negatives, the answer is going to be negative when you multiply. If it's an even number, the answer is going to be positive, because all those even ones will pair up and make positives. So we know it's going to be negative, and then we just have to do 4 times 2 times 1 times 2 times 2. Should give us 32. I'm just going to finish with this one for today, and we're not going to do the whole thing today. Okay, this would be new. Part of it would be new. So if I said, what's 0 divide 5? 0. 0. 0 divide any number is always 0. What's 5 divided by 0? Not 0. Sorry? Not 5. Sadie? Sienna? Yes. You can't do it. You cannot divide by 0. You can divide 0 by a number and get 0 for an answer, but you can't divide by 0. So think of it this way. This one here, I'm trying to figure out 0 divided, I'm going to write it using this. I'm trying to figure out what 0 divided by 5 is. If 0 divided by 5 is some answer I'm looking for, doesn't that mean that the answer times 5 must be 0? Working backwards, like isn't the reverse of multiplication or division multiplication? So whatever my answer is, if I times by 5, I should get 0. So that means my unknown is 0. That's why we can do 0 divide any number and get 0. But it doesn't work the same way when we do 5 divided by 0. Because if we work backwards, that must mean that the number I'm looking for times 0 must be 5. But what number can you multiply by 0 and get an answer of 5? There is no such number. It's impossible. But instead of saying impossible, we just write undefined. There's no answer to this. You can always look besides Lucy, that little poster there. Friends don't let friends divide by 0. What if you use this reasoning? What would 0 divided by 0 be? Yes, sir. Yes. Because if you think about it, 0 divided 0 is some answer. That means my answer times 0 must be 0. Well, what number, when you multiply by 0, gets 0? 5? Does 5 work? 5 times 0 is 0? Yeah. Does 10 work? 10 times 0 is 0? Does negative 7 work? Negative 7 times 0 is 0? Any number works. So what's the answer? Every number. Or, so we say every number. Which means it goes on forever. Anybody know what we call when numbers go on forever? They go to infinity. And how do we write infinity? A sideways 8. because there's infinite answers. So sometimes you will see 0 divides 0 equals infinity. Students like that because they like drawing the side. Okay, we still got a little bit to do on area and perimeter, but I'm just going to keep it at that for today. Try and just keep it simple. We'll do that next week. Okay, so we'll stop for today.